I was thinking this past week, it's interesting to me, and we kind of take speaking and language for granted, but words are alive. Words are very powerful, and words are not static. They change. They have different meaning and significance and purpose over time. I mean, those of us who are old enough remember when hot meant hot and cool meant cool, and now it means all kinds of things. It doesn't even mean like hot, that's neat. It means like, wow, that's he or she's hot. You know what? I mean, what is that really? But that's the way it is. Or chill. Chill's the newest one. I'm going to chill. Okay, does that mean your air conditioner is set down really low or what? But, you know, the kids use that phrase all the time. So words are not static. Words are dynamic. They're always evolving, taking on new significance and meaning. They are alive. That's why when scholars study the Bible, they don't just read the word and use a 20th century interpretation of it. They try to go back and look at how was that word used in the first century. And not only in the first century, in Palestine or in Greece or something like that, to see what were they really trying to say in that context. All of which caused me to think about a phrase that people use frequently now. Someone will look at, I've heard ladies say to one another, man, that dress was to, you've heard it, to die for. That dress, that house, that job, it was to die for. Or here's another one. Here's another one. I'd kill to have that. You ever heard that? I'd kill to have that job, or I'd kill to have that job with the perks and the vacation or the car and the house. I'd kill to do that. I mean, really, would you? Well, in this day and age, I think but you see, what I'm talking about is less about the loss of life. It's except in when we use that phrase, it is the maximum price we would pay for anything. I mean, that's really what we're saying is, I would give everything I have just for that. And that's a pretty significant thing to say. I mean, that is not a trite expression of our values when you say, man, that's it to die for. It has that phrase has serious significance regarding our values, our standards, our purpose, and what we consider having absolute worth in our life. And while on a national level, humankind has striven to increase and protect the value of human life, I mean, we've tried to do this in many, many ways through medicine and so forth. I mean, even in war, we have smart bombs, right? And we get upset when a bomb does not target the military enemies and it somehow hits civilians. And once upon a time, that was not thought of at all. And of course, there are no kings who have the right to simply arrest you and take you and execute you. You know, we have civil rights. And so on one level, you know, life has this powerful significance that we are aware of. And yet on the other side, there's this dichotomy going on where life seems valueless, where people shoot each other these days over spilling coffee on someone's lap or cutting another person off in traffic or simply being in the wrong place at the wrong time. We have this dichotomy in our thinking and in our world these days. And I don't think it's because we are more violent than we have been at other times in the past. I don't think that's the case. We may be more aware of it, but we are certainly not more violent in our culture than they have in some cultures past. It's just that we have made destruction and death so accessible and so easy. You know, anyone with a computer can learn how to make a bomb. We've made it easy and accessible, but also I think it's representative of how our sense of relationships and connectedness has been fragmented and dissipated. You know, you attack and you hurt people when you're not vested in them, when you're not vested in the society, when you don't care for them, when there's no ownership beyond just me. Which is completely opposite of what Jesus meant when he said, if you're going to be the master, if you're going to be successful in life, what do you have to do? You have to be the servant of all. That it's not about gravitating towards the top and it's about me. It's quite the contrary. It is about using whatever we have in life, whatever talents, abilities, to benefit one and all, to serve others, not destroy them. And I think that's the common belief that God brings. You know, and as we've become less focused on God in our lives, and God has become more peripheral, there is that lack of unifying purpose and idealism and values that comes from a spirituality that somehow we seek and share together. Because God brings people together in a shared accountability and a shared mutuality. When you see yourself united in one who creates us, then we all take on the appearance and the connectedness of being family, that we are related. And scientifically, we know that. Well, I mean, what do they tell us from DNA and from studies? That really we all kind of go back to the same ones, right? And yet we're the ones who allow that to become fragmented and dissipated. That when there is not that one in our life to whom we're accountable, to whom we're responsible, that pulls us together, then we become accountable only to ourselves, which means we are free to act independently without any thought of consequences other than how does it benefit me? I'm the only one I have to answer to. Right? And think about that, because how many times have you heard someone say, well, I don't care what anybody else thinks. I'll say what I want to say. I'll do what I want to do. I don't care. There is that brokenness. And I think the lack of a spirituality and a commonality in a centering on God makes all the difference in the world. You know, I think that this is one of the things, I suspect this is one of the things that is drawing these young people around the world, perhaps, to get involved in something as horrific as ISIS. Is that what is provided there and what is maybe lacking in other areas is that sense to a higher calling and ideals and immediate action and response, which in churches that are thriving have that. They have that call to witness. They have that call to purpose. You don't just come and leave, you come and serve. And so if our society is seeing a draining of these folk, we have to wonder ourselves, are we lacking that commonality and that sense of purpose, those ideals that help people to be vested in who we are and what we believe? You see, the cross says something to us that is significant in this regard. The cross says that this is the point where Christ and where God is willing to give it all up. That this is the place, the spot, the exclamation point that culminates in everything I have said and done. When you think about Christ on the cross, everything he has said swirls around like that symphony and comes together as he turns to a thief on the cross next to him and says, "Today you will be with me in paradise." No matter who you are or where you have been on life's journey, you will be with me. And then he turns to those who are crucifying and he says, the empathy is incredible. He says to those people down there, he says, forgive them because they don't know what they're doing. You see, the cross is the exclamation point at the end of the gospel message. It is the final word of the one who said, I am the Word. I am the Word, the way, the truth, the life, which is how to live, how to act, in whom we should find our life and meaning. And as such, the cross stands in direct opposition to any person, any situation who uses, abuses, maims, or defames others, saying that the cross says to us, God is about people, all people, no, not institutional power or personal fame or glory or wealth. God is ultimately about people. And that is bigger and broader and holier, let's just admit it, than any single one of us. You know, one of the things I'm always amazed at when I go to a sporting event, and the bigger the event, the more obvious it is that when the flag comes out and the national anthem begins, other allegiances, partisans, all are dropped. People even set aside their beer to put their hat on their head and their hand on their heart in a symbol or semblance I mean, think about it. Everything else just kind of disappears in a symbol or semblance of a commitment to a higher cause, a different set of values and ideals, which everybody there, I'm sure, doesn't interpret or understand exactly the same way. That's not what it is about. Because when you're in family, families don't always see things the same way. But 80,000 people suddenly are united in allegiance and in respect. And I think to myself, wouldn't it be wonderful if somehow the cross or that symbol, that presence of God, inspired us to do the same, to drop those things that separate us and unite us in those higher ideals and causes that give us purpose and meaning in life, that bridge the divisions between Christians, setting aside human interpretations and doctrines that separate long enough to recommit and rededicate ourselves to the higher and central tenets of our faith, which Paul lays out so clearly in the book of Philippians, where he writes, "Think of yourselves the way Jesus thought of himself. Though he was given equal status with God, he didn't think so much of himself in that regard. He did not cling to the advantages that status provided. Instead, when the time came, he set aside the privileges of deity to take on the status of a slave, a human, living a selfless and obedient life, and then dying a selfless and obedient death, the worst kind of death, a crucifixion." You see, that's the cross, which in essence we pledge allegiance to whenever we renew our baptism through communion. You know, communion, well, I don't know if you're aware of it, communion is many things, but one of the things it is a renewal of the baptismal covenant you once participated in. The thing that made you a part of the family of God, that grafted you into the body of Christ. And what you do when you break the bread and you drink the cup is you swear allegiance once again to those ideals and those dreams and those values that rise above all that separates us, giving us purpose and value in life. The word sacrament, and in the Protestant church there are two sacraments, baptism and communion. The word sacrament actually comes from the Roman legions, because the soldiers gave a sacred oath or a sacrament to Caesar. And the early church called their acts, their holy acts, sacred acts or words of allegiance to God or to Christ. And the soldier said, that's important enough for me to what? Not only live for, die for. All of us want to live, don't we? I mean, really, we want to live without fear or hatred or the constant feeling, that we have more and more these days that anywhere we go, we might be threatened or in danger. Someone might take advantage of us. The irony is, I cannot expect others to change until I change first. And the change we seek will not come through outside legislation. We continually want somebody else to fix it for us. I had a professor in seminary who said, you can tell when a society is out of control by how many laws they have to have. When people themselves cannot manage themselves. But these characteristics are not in someone else. We own them all, and they have to die in us first before they can change the world. And that's scary. That's as scary as when Jesus turned to his disciples and said, the seed's got to go in the ground if something new's got to happen. The cross has to be raised up if life is going to begin. It's odd, and it's kind of depressing, but I'm going to say it anyway. Hasn't stopped me before. But from the day we are born, I want you to think about this. From the day we are born, we are dying. From the day we are born, we are dying. We live a lot in between, and we anticipate living a lot and doing a lot, but from the day we are born, literally our cells begin to change and so forth. You are never as fresh and as wonderful as you are that day. So we are really, in some respects, dying to live. You think about that? In some respects, you are actually at this moment dying to live. That's a fact. And that's a variable and the variable within that is we have to ask ourselves then, what are we living for? And is it worth dying for as well? We are dying to live. For the cross says to us, there is no more important question in life than asking, not are you living for, but what would you die for? There is no more important question in life than that we can ask. And you have to answer that for yourself. Amen.